Hi, my name is Yasmin Terehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, spirituality, and consciousness. Today's show is with Dr. Jacqueline Chan, and we're going to be talking about medical intuition, and we're also going to be exploring cerebral spinal fluid, known as CSF, and the kind of universal connections between the spinal fluid and the cosmos. And Dr. Jacqueline Chan is a holistic medicine physician at the Marin Natural Medicine Clinic. She holds an osteopathic medical degree from Ohio University. She is also board certified in integrative holistic medicine, focuses on the holistic kind of comprehensive health of a person, addressing not just physical, but also emotional and subtle energy aspects. And she employs a number of different types of treatments. You could check out all that she does on her website. Dr. Jacqueline Chan has been a dear friend of mine for a long time. And for those listeners who have been fans of the show for the last 4+ years, Dr. Jacqueline Chan was my very first guest. And it's kind of funny because I think that it's almost 4 years to the exact month that we kicked off the conversation. So welcome back, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I just want to say that I'm thrilled to come back again and have a great conversation with you about something we both absolutely love. And it really opened up, your invitation opened up a portal for me of fascination. And I could have just read and prepared for 100 hours more for this, because it's just a topic that always leads me to amazement. And I'm really proud of you. I'm just really proud of all the things that you're doing, and the way you live your life and the way I've seen your evolution. And I remember when we were talking, you said, I think I've cracked the code. And I'm like, I don't know how she does it, between going on the Camino with your dad and having a short documentary movie competition, and doing your Kundalini yoga at 4 a.m. and just, remaining. And I know that you walk your talk, is all I have to say. You walk your talk. And if it takes a podcast for me to get to have a whole hour to just talk to you, I'm happy.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's so sweet, Jacqueline. Thank you so much. It's so lovely for someone who can understand nuance like you to see the complexity of someone's evolution. Like I feel like so seen by you always, and I know that you're tracking so many different elements of what it is to be human. So I want to dive into the show. I want to, kick it off and just kind of briefly talk a little bit about intuitive medicine again, and really just kind of ground this topic with our audience. So can you share a little bit about what is intuitive medicine? What exactly is medical intuition? And what kind of person do you usually help?
Medical intuition really is the application of energy medicine within a medical model, in which the information that is gleaned that could help the patient is coming through the intuitive portals of the practitioner. And I never would have thought in my lifetime I'd even be saying what I just said, because intuition was something that was completely mocked and made fun of, eye rolls in medical school. Just there was no place for it whatsoever. So it has taken me a long time to even feel comfortable speaking about it publicly. However, it's now all out in the public, thanks to your podcast and many other speakers and authors, and there's nothing really to hide anymore. And now the science is really catching up with it. But to give an example, people usually come to me because they're tired. sometimes because they're anxious or slightly depressed, and sometimes because they're incredibly sick and they've been to at least 5 other doctors. They may have at least 8 different medical diagnoses, and they feel dismissed by the allopathic medical model and by many physicians. And that's because in medicine works really well within a disease model. Like, you have hepatitis, it's caused by this virus. This is the medicine we're going to do and give you to, rectify it. Or you have a broken bone, or this is where it's broken. This is how we're going to cast it, and this is how long it takes to heal. Medicine works incredibly in that area. Um, where it doesn't work well is in understanding physiology and optimization of physiology that has been burdened by things like toxins, chemicals, mold, heavy metals. There are the Environmental Working Group now. In fact, the CDC just recently talked about the importance of testing for organophosphates as well as plastics and microplastics that are in our food and water supply, and how they are endocrine disruptors, meaning that they interfere with how hormones um, become activated. And so basically we have a lot of dirt. We have dirt in the environment, and it's affecting our body. And that doesn't really fit into like a disease model. And so a lot of standard medicine doesn't really know how to deal with that. But in the world of natural medicine, integrative holistic medicine, I've done a ton of training in detoxification, board certified in heavy metal detox and environmental detox, and the labs used to find these and to measure things like the different kinds of hormones. Is it the active hormone or the inactive hormone? And then how to boost the organs like adrenals, thyroid, liver with botanicals. Botanical herbs are incredible at deeply nourishing our endocrine system and physiology. So the type of patient I see is all of that. Usually energy medicine is a secondary. So it's something where I will suggest to the patient the energy medicine. And then there's, of course, a sub-select people, some of which have heard me speak, for example, who come purely for the energy medicine. And they're usually curious, and they don't know exactly what's going to happen. And I never know either, except that it's usually amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, Jacqueline, I want to double click on this. Like, give us an example of a botanical herb, that you would like. What's sort of a common thing that you see come up in your practice? Maybe you could even give us an example of like women around the age of 30, 40, 50. Like, what do you see kind of as a common theme?
Well, women are really struggling. Our society is challenging. It's very hard to live a natural, healthy lifestyle. So, first of all, women are usually mothers. And if they're mothers, in the United States of America, most mothers are working. And that alone is hard, working mother. And so there can be difficulties with sleep. There can be, and then actually raising a child nowadays is a lot more complex than it was raising a child maybe 50 years ago. Kids just don't go outside and play together so much anymore. And um, there's a lot more tech involved and planning and organizing um, and and then our food, the diet, the food that we get from the store isn't always the best for us. It's got seed oils in it, and corn syrup instead of organic cane sugar, and sweeteners, and food colorings and things that basically change the person's behavior, their mood. So what I see in women who come to see me is I often see that they're worn out, and that shows up with their adrenal glands, their markers of cortisol, DHEA, pregnenolone, certain hormones are down, and estrogen, progesterone. They may start having um, some anxiety, difficulty sleeping, PMS, irregular periods. And I am a big, one of the herbs, for example, for that is maca, MACA. It's from South America, and it's really great at helping the ovaries, the adrenals, and the thyroid communicate. Another great adrenal adaptogen is ashwagandha. That's a really good broad spectrum one. So botanicals work best in synergism, just like spices. You usually don't give just one spice, you usually give oregano and basil, or, rosemary and thyme. So basically botanicals usually comes a combination, things like for the adrenals, cordyceps, ginseng, ashwagandha. Romania is amazing for emotional stress. Um, and yeah, so
Amazing.
that's a yeah,
That's
that's an
cool.
answer.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I've been taking ashwagandha here and there, but yeah, haven't checked out some of these other ones. I'll check them out. I want to double click and talk a little bit about your book. Well, actually, not just your book, right? But your class, really, which I
Okay.
sometimes think that you wrote the book called Growing the Mystical Brain, but you teach a class in it.
Yes.
Maybe I'm also intuitively alluding to your upcoming book that you might write.
Yes.
I was like,
The book that's in the ethers that wants to be born. Yes.
yes. We're calling that in. But yeah, you teach a class called Growing the Mystical Brain. And like, just curious, what are some of the moments or pivotal moments in your life that led you to kind of focus on teaching this class? And why do you call it the mystical brain?
Okay, I love that question. I've always been interested in the brain. The brain creates our feelings, our perceptions, our sense of connection, empathy, compassion, everything. To me, it's our most important organ. And I wrote a book called Regenerate Your Brain, Creating a Breakthrough Plan for Your Brilliance, which was really to help with anxiety, depression, attention deficit disorder, etc., through natural medicine. And that journey began when I fell off my bicycle when I was 14 in Ireland and didn't know how to walk, didn't know my name. And I was hospitalized for 6 days. And back then they didn't do, CAT scans or MRIs in rural Ireland for a traumatic brain injury. And so they just watched me until I figured out how to walk and I remembered my name again. But I'm pretty sure that I had a minor brain bleed because fast forward um, about 20 years, and I made it into med school, no problem. Was accepted by several schools, graduated eighth in my class, but it took effort. I had to work really hard. And then I was reading a book by Dr. Amen on the 6 types of ADD. And Dr. Amen's a psychiatrist who said, instead of diagnosing people with a personality disorder, let's actually treat their brain. And I love that he did that. And he did SPECT scans of the brain to see how they were functioning. And I realized in reading my book that this bicycle accident, which affected my left prefrontal cortex, had caused me to get attention deficit disorder, which I then treated using botanicals and nutraceuticals, etc., and meditation. And then you fast forward to COVID, right? So here comes COVID, and wouldn't you know, I got COVID. Some of us have all, have had COVID or even had it more than once, and we have our COVID stories. And it was, brief for me. It was only like 5 days, but I had a lot of brain fog and dizziness. And so it went right to the weak area of my body, which was, I believe, this scar that I had from my bike injury. And I laid down. I had to lie down on the weekend. I laid down for a complete 9 hours, 5 hours one day and 4 hours the next. And this this is going to sound strange, but this is how this course, Growing the Mystical Brain, began. What happened as I was lying down is I was trying to actually move the cerebral spinal fluid around my brain and breathe, do some deep breathing and help the circulation in my brain. And this bright golden light came down into my forehead area and started pulsating psychedelic bright colors through my brain, like peacock blue and emerald green and fuchsia pink. And it was incredible. And I said, what is happening to me? What is going on? And what are you? And I heard a voice that said, this is awakening. This is awakening. And then I had enough sense of slowed downness and kind of fascination with this process of canceling all my plans to go anywhere and just being with my biology very intimately and sensorially and feeling into it, that I went underneath a willow tree right outside my house and was looking up at the branches. And I said, I think I'm going to try to talk to the virus in my system. And I was able to sense where it was. And it was outside my body on the left side above my head. And I said, what do you want? Why have you come into my system, and what do you want from me? And I heard the message, you need to be more and do less. And I was like, wow, okay. Yeah, I can do that. I will be more. And then I said, thank you. Would you leave me now? And sure enough, I felt a clockwise spin in my auric field, and I felt this dizziness go away. And I tested myself 5 minutes later, and I tested negative. And I'd been testing myself every day for 10 days. And this was the first day that I tested negative. So that really began my journey with growing the mystical brain. And the reason I call it mystical brain is really I borrowed the term from Matthew Fox, who is a Christian minister. And he talks about the importance of our accessing the divine and wisdom and consciousness, and that this is it's like a dying art. It's a dying, it's something that we need to value and come back to. And so I developed this class to look at, it's a six-part class to look at combining, my knowledge in cranial osteopathy as an osteopathic physician, my knowledge in energy medicine, my knowledge in Taoism, and and cast out a wider net across the board, that really led me to 11 pivotal books that I read in order to create the class, that go all the way from cosmology to neuroanatomy to mindfulness to consciousness. And the whole thing was very enjoyable for me. I felt like I was given an invitation to go down this, this portal, this rabbit hole, if you will, that ended up becoming this class, so that's the story.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, and
Yeah.
the class, syllabus just looks incredible. And I think for those who are listening, it's things like building a foundation of health for the central nervous system, to understanding the physiological effects of trauma, all the way to the topic that we're going to talk a little bit about is about this cerebral spinal fluid. So I definitely want to talk about that topic because it's so interesting, and one that really blew my mind when we connected in Marin a couple months ago. So could you tell us a little bit about this cerebral spinal fluid called CSF for short, and what is the connection to kind of the broader cosmic or cosmos?
Sure. So cerebral spinal fluid is a clear liquid that is thick, and it's filled with cations and proteins and negative ions, but it does not have blood in it. And it's made in the brain by it's called the choroid plexus, this little outpouching of, you know, an aspect of our neurological anatomy that makes the cerebral spinal fluid. And then it's also made from filtered blood. So partially, we circulate 5 liters of blood around our body every minute, and part of that gets filtered and becomes the cerebral spinal fluid. So it's both made as well as filtered from the blood in a rhythmic fashion, because our blood is circulating rhythmically around our body. And it goes around the brain and the entire spinal cord, all the way down to the lower lumbar area, and it's within a sheath, and that sheath is called the meninges. And some people may have heard the term meningitis. If a child gets meningitis, and also most of us have heard of when a woman is pregnant, if she gets an epidural when she's giving birth, that's where they actually, give an injection of an anesthesia around that area. So, and then we've all heard of the term spinal tap, where they actually tap into through that meninges, and they get out the fluid to do an analysis sometimes in a medical case. But the cerebral spinal fluid provides 80% of the nutrition to our brain and our spinal cord. Now, what was very interesting to me was this book called A New Science of Heaven by Robert Temple, which really blew me away. And it came on the heels of a trip to Egypt. And Egypt is where the Kabbalion was written by Hermes Trismegistus. And the first principle of the Kabbalion is as above, so below. And so within, so without is possibly the second principle of really the first school of mysticism in the world, which came out of Egypt. And so here was evidence in the book A New Science of Heaven of a different aspect to the cosmos that includes plasma, that dark matter in space is actually plasma, and that plasma has sentience and its own intelligence. And that the correlate in our physical body, if you were going to follow that principle, as above, so below, so then the correlate in our physical body is cerebral spinal fluid. And cerebral spinal fluid is considered bioplasma. And bioplasma can act as a conductor, a semiconductor. So it takes a chemical, or it takes light energy and converts it into electricity. And it has can carry information into the quantum. And this got me very interested because when you look at ancient wisdom and ancient embodied practices such as yoga, specifically. You could say Kundalini yoga, and I know you teach that, Yasmin, so you understand that a lot more than I do. But and then the central channel in Qigong, energetic Qigong, there's always this, drawing attention to our spinal cord and our energetic central channel. And we talk about that also at the Academy of Intuition Medicine. And why is that? Well, in our central channel is our cerebral spinal fluid. It's going around our spinal cord and then also into our brain, into the center of the brain, where it actually comes out of something called the fourth ventricle in the center of our brain. And guess what we call the center of the brain? We call that the meditation sanctuary. Some people refer to it as the seat of the soul. Go into the cave of the Brahman, go into the cave in the middle of your head. And there are many practices where you're actually pushing the cerebral spinal fluid up from your sacrum, tailbone area, using sometimes it's like a contraction of those muscles down there, and breath, and contracting the diaphragm and pushing it up all the way into the middle of the head, and even sometimes tongue position on the roof of the mouth. And right above the roof of your mouth is where that fourth ventricle lies. And so it's like, oh, these ancient practices are purposefully trying to move this fluid up the spinal cord into the brain. Now, why? What's so important about this fluid? Well, this is going to blow you away. Guess what sits right in the fourth ventricle, surrounded by this fluid, is this powerful organ we've all heard about called the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is a small little pea-sized organ that produces pinealine, which is it's essentially like DMT. And those in the world of, psychedelics have a very rich understanding of this, but it essentially allows us to access an incredible dimension of creativity and you could say nonlinear time and space. And that pinealine is actually squirted out, not directly into cells, but right there into the cerebral spinal fluid. It's bathed in the cerebral spinal fluid in the fourth ventricle. And if that cerebral spinal fluid is bioplasmic, it means that it's structured and it can hold a message and, like a crystal, just transport it through our entire freaking nervous system. That, to me, is probably the most powerful use of our fluid system and biology, in terms of connecting the bridge between the other veils and the other dimensions and our physical body and what our physical body is capable of.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I feel like we could do a whole show just on this last comment that you made about the cerebral spinal fluid. And it's just the potentiality, I think, with understanding it and meditating with it. And like you said, there's a lot of information that you could even embed in there, right? When it comes to things that you want to bring in. I think that was the conversation we were also having, which might be a little bit too mystical for our audience, but I'm really fascinated by that, with this connection with the cosmos. If we were to set intention or meditate on certain thoughts or images, how much of that gets accelerated, for example.
I think it absolutely can get accelerated. Am I aware of a research study about it? No. Would that be something to look at? Absolutely. We do know from Dr. Joe Dispenza's research that exosomes are produced. And those are molecules that are produced in meditation, and they are generated also with resonance in a group of people. That's been shown and measured. And that there are my personal story, I can say when I created this class and I taught, uh, one part of the class is to find what your no is, and this is some work from Gabor Mate and the physiology of trauma. But to find your no and then be able to set your energetic boundaries so that you protect yourself in a way that there is no betrayal, invasion, let down, abuse, those types of things through healthy boundaries. But the opposite of that is your most authentic yes. And Gabor Mate was finding that people who got severe illness and disease, often it was that they didn't actually live out their most authentic yes. What is inside you will save you. And if you do not live what's inside you, it will bring you down. And so to really, so I taught a class on your most authentic yes, and using um, art, shape, if you could even say sound, bringing that shape in at that area of the fourth ventricle and into the upper, middle, and lower dantians. Um, right after I did that meditation, I had been really wanting a month off to confess. As fascinating as all this stuff was, I also kind of was like, I just really need like a month off. And within 24 hours of me doing that meditation on your most authentic yes, I got a text from a friend who was like, "Hey, I'm going to this Ayurvedic spa in Sri Lanka for a month, and I'm looking for somebody to accompany me because I have a seizure disorder, and I'll pay for everything, and everything's taken care of." And I was like, "Oh my God," so and I mean, you're laughing because I know that you have had almost instantaneous manifestation of things, and probably some of the listeners have too, but this has happened to me more than once for sure,
Yeah.
where it's almost within 24 hours you see uh, this unfolding of synchronicity and magic and opening, and it's like wow, um, yeah.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that story. I love that. Yeah, I love instant manifestation stories. And yeah, I'm curious to see, what plays out with the research. It does feel like since, we are in the world of intuition that there's a lot of it's almost like an understanding of natural law, right? But you can't quite necessarily even scientifically explain it, but it does feel like a lot of these conversations are ahead of its time. So, and by the way, in Kundalini Yoga, I also can't quote this from any medical journal, but I believe that what we do in Kundalini Yoga is that we are essentially using breath and then holding our body, squeezing our body. We call it like body locks or the bandhas, like the mula bandha, where we squeeze our organs after we hold our breath and while we're holding our breath to move the energy up. So it's a lot of like expansion, contraction, a lot of kind of quick breaths, but there's also slow breaths. So, depending on the states that you want to move into, it's either moving energy out or it's also kind of connecting you back with yourself. So it's fascinating that breath and squeezing could just do so much in terms of stimulation and relaxation. So I want to talk a little bit more about this kind of name that you've been given, which is the physician mystic. We spoke briefly about this in our very first episode, but I want to double click on this idea of like the physician mystic, and I feel like this is the type of physician that we need in our time right now, which is a physician who understands that what's going on with human beings is not just limited to the physical, right? That's just part of the larger kind of story. So, can you tell me about this title? Where did it come from? And where do you see kind of the nature of medicine moving towards?
Mm, wow. Physician mystic really describes me well. And to be honest, I don't remember if I came up with the term or if a friend described me that way. Um, and before I went to medical school, I majored in philosophy. I was never a pre-med major. In fact, after medical school, I worked on Wall Street, and I was getting my MBA in finance, and then I went back into medicine. But I majored in philosophy because I was asking the question, what is the truth and what is reality? That was a question that um, I loved being engaged in, and it continues to be. It's still the question for me. Um, and so for being a major in philosophy, you're allowed to be in the gray area. The other thing that I was interested in was theology, and I if I could do it all over again, I probably would have done the study in theology as well, um, because I had a strong sense of faith, and I had the experience as a teenager through dreams of some premonitions that were 100% accurate and incredibly detailed information. I was thinking about the definition of intuition, and at one point I was reading, it's called following a hunch. Well, that wasn't my experience. My experience, one of the first premonitions that was very detailed and striking was, and unfortunately, they have to do with death. Um, Early death of people in my life. But one was, I was in medical school, and she was a dear friend of mine, and she was a med student. And she died during a medical procedure of something called a saddle pulmonary embolism. So she had a little blood blister in her liver, and it got loosened during the medical procedure and went up to her lungs, and she died instantly. Well, so the night before her memorial, I had a dream, and the phone was ringing, and I picked up the phone. This is before we had cell phones. It was the old-fashioned kind with the ringlets. And I picked up the phone, and I heard her voice, and I said, "Is that you?" "Yes, it's me." And I was so shocked to hear her voice that in the dream I dropped the phone, and it was just dangling, dangling on the ringlets on the spring. And I could keep hearing her voice, and I picked it up again, and she said, "Call me back. I'm doing great." And she left this 11-digit number. And I woke up in the morning with the 11-digit number memorized. Now, I don't have photographic memory, and it's not normal to be able to memorize more than 9 numbers in a row. And I went to the memorial, and I was talking to her sister, and her sister said, "We've been looking for a sign from her that she's okay." And I said, "I think I have the sign." I had a dream about her, and her voice, she was so cheerful. She was like, "Hi, I'm doing great." And she said, "Oh my God, you have to call her mother and tell her that story." And I said, "Okay." She said, "This is her mother's phone number." Of Her mother was there at memorial, but she was swamped and had lots of people. She said, "This is her phone number." It was the exact same number.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
11-digit number. So that's how I encountered my intuition. And I could tell you probably 10 more stories like that, at least. And so now I'm forgetting the question. I'm getting so caught up in the story. What was it? What was the question again, Yasmin? Oh, mystic?
The physician mystic.
Okay, go
Yeah,
back.
like you've been called a
Yeah.
physician mystic. Yeah.
Yeah. So so anyways, I have gotten information, and I actually, in preparation of this talk, discovered that I get a lot of information from my fingers, okay, from my fingertips. When I hover my hands over somebody's body, or I have them on the person when I'm doing some osteopathic manipulation, and there are these cells called the Merkel cells in the fingertips that are sensitive to EMFs and frequency. And so one day I was treating a patient. I had my hands on her forehead, and the serendipity prayer came to me very strongly. And I said, the phrase of the serendipity prayer is coming up. She said, "Oh my God, I've been working on my autobiography, and that's how I open the book is with the serendipity prayer." So I was reading it right out of her brain, with my fingers over her head, and I've had other amazing things happen with my fingers over someone's heart. And so I need to honor this part of my biology, and we all have it. I need to honor the power of my palms and my hands and my psychokinetic abilities as a portal of perception that is giving me extremely accurate information from that person's subtle energy body. And it's usually very heartfelt and very meaningful. Um, and it kind of comes from their heart, their heart space.
Mm. Yes, I love that. We did so much also in our program at the Intuition School on psychometry and using our hands. And and also in Kundalini Yoga, we talk a lot about how each hand they're almost like antennas, to connect with different fields of energy. So,
Exactly.
yeah, it's fascinating. So, why do you think that these subjects are important, Jacqueline?
Well, you know, my interest is in getting the biofield or the subtle energy anatomy, and I mean the auric field, the chakras, on the map in terms of part of our anatomy and physiology. And, when I went to medical school, you studied the musculoskeletal system, the gastrointestinal system, the cardiovascular system, the neurological system. You'd never studied the subtle energy anatomy system, but you could go to, a completely different school to learn that. And the two didn't talk to each other. And the biofield is actually, to me, our most sophisticated and powerful aspect of our physical body. Because when your biofield is in coherence, heart rate variability normalizes, the autonomic nervous system is in balance, and stress levels go down. Our ability to respond with flexibility to life stressors increases. Our ability to have empathy, to modulate our fear, to essentially make decisions that are empowering and not reactive. And if you do believe in a higher power, in divinity, the frequency of divinity, and then that is also a place where we can have more access to that, and or your personal relationship with that. And I believe that our biofield, it should be part of the equation. It should be part of the conversation. Um, so I'm that's why this is important. I think it's extremely important,
Yeah, could not agree
and its
more.
time has come.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, its
Yeah.
time has come.
People are really going through it right now. I mean, there's a lot of disconnection and and I'm just I'm with you. I feel like we need to educate ourselves outside of just our physical, being. There's so much more to the
Mhm.
experience here on this planet that I think we're only living a fraction of. So what sort of things have surprised you the most, like looking back on this journey that you've been on? And it could be about your patients, themes emerging from that, or about what you've been studying, or could be about cerebral spinal fluid, even the conversation we just had.
Um, I think I think what surprised me the most is the beauty, the complexity, and the detail of information and messages exchanged when the biofield is treated. And it seems to be a missing link in a patient's journey towards wholeness. I'll give you a quick example of a patient I saw 2 weeks ago who came to me for hyperbaric oxygen therapy for swelling in the brain because she had just had brain surgery for a very rapid growing brain tumor that appeared out of nowhere and in 4 months was um, all over her brain, called glioblastoma multiforme. It's the worst brain cancer you can possibly ever get. And there were no indicators as to why she got this cancer. And they had been able to surgically remove all of it, but they told her it's never going to go away. And it's just a matter of time when it's going to come back. And who knows, right? I mean, to tell somebody that is, I mean, that's probably statistically true, but who, there are miracles and there are people who have proved otherwise. But I said, well, how are you coping with all of this? This is so much. And I said, I'd love to do a healing session on you in a salt room. And I now rent this room that's made out of 600 million-year-old blocks of salt that kind of create an environment in which the biofield is strengthened. And when I laid her on the table in that room, um, she started shaking and crying all over, and she didn't know why. And what I saw was all these people who were bald, who were undergoing chemo, who were walking in the hallways of the place that she would go for her chemotherapy. And it had been a shocking scene for her. And it was really hard for her to resonate with being a healthy person when she's in this building and seeing all these people who are undergoing a diagnosis possibly similar to hers, which is like a death sentence. And we cleared that from her system until she came into the resonance of healthy normal. Because technically, the tumor is gone, but she had to clear out of that. And that brought her so much more joy and uh, confidence and hope. And, no pill can do that for you, you know. So that was really profound. And so I have probably 100 stories like that where nature, a tree spirit comes in, or a mountain range, or someone who's deceased, and a dear grandfather or grandmother comes in and it participates in this person's healing. And it's always beautiful. It's always moving. Most of my patients cry, and when I see this image, it happens simultaneously to when the patient starts to cry or an emotion comes up, and they see it also. It's absolutely simultaneous. And I'm humbled. I'm just completely humbled because I feel like I have nothing to do with it. I'm just engaging the system, and the system is unfolding and opening up. And that's the mystery. These are things that are hidden, and when they feel safe, they come forward and open up. Um, Much like the mystery of friendship, we are that way with each other, where we discover things as they arise, deeper truths. And it's part of the beauty of living and being alive. And there's a unknown timing to it. But the more we relax and kind of get out of our agenda, and we get into more of a deep caring place, a deep honoring and caring, and just wanting what's best for the person, just a purity in your heart, the more those things begin to rise. And I believe that, um, in Shamini Jain's book on healing ourselves and biofield science, she talks about a beautiful prayer. And they studied the powerful effects of a prayer, of really wanting what's best for somebody else and kind of sending that to that person like a blessing. And there's a prayer called the metta meditation, which is where, I wish for myself ease and grace, and I wish for the other person ease and grace. And when I was surrounded by several doctors in Sri Lanka, they said, we really believe if everybody said this prayer every day, there wouldn't be any disease at all.
Hmm.
And it's just coming back to sometimes just some very simple, basic principles of kindness and goodness, and that the world, the natural world, is designed for abundance. It's designed for success. It's designed for goodness. Um, and we need to just come back to that. And sometimes we get caught up in the fight for it, but it can be the graciousness of slowing down and dropping into our hearts and caring, taking time to care. Yeah.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh, beautifully said. I love that so much. And you also walk your talk, Jacqueline. You're one of the most caring, loving, kind humans I've ever met. And I just love how much you love people on this earth. And yeah, it's so special to be in your company. So,
Thank
what do you want to tell our listeners as a call to action, your main takeaway? What do you want people to do today or to start thinking about after this conversation?
Well, I would love to stay in touch with you. And if you go to my website, www.drjacqueline.com, which is all lowercase DRJACQUELINE.com /brain quiz, then you can take a quiz about how well you know how to take care of your brain and your central nervous system. And then you can also, I, I can have your email address, and I can alert you of any other future unfoldings and things you could be interested in. So, because yeah, that's probably the number one thing, or just going to my website and messaging me and getting on my list
Amazing.
so we can stay in touch.
Amazing. Amazing. So great.
Yeah.
And we'll include your link in the show notes for folks. And then are you on social media? Are there any other places that people can find you?
Start with my website, because then that will connect to the social
Okay,
media.
perfect. Awesome. And
Yeah.
what about this class that you're offering? Is it only for students who've gone through your first program, or is this for anyone?
Well, I am teaching a class December 7th at the Academy of Intuition Medicine to the general public called Chakra Doctor, which goes through all the chakras and the important things that you can do for it health wise for each chakra. And then I will teach on Saturdays in 2025 at the Academy of Intuition Medicine to the general public as well. And right now, those topics are open. So it may be one section at a time of growing your mystical brain, but there are some other evolutions of it. They're not complete yet. And that's why I want you to stay in touch with me.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. This was so lovely. And I learned a lot. I'm going to be going down the rabbit hole of these conversations and learning more about cerebral spinal fluid. And I'm sure folks listening will probably going to, go down the rabbit hole as well. So thank you so much for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Yasmin.
And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about medical intuition, cerebral spinal fluid, and just so much more with Dr. Jacqueline Chan. And you could tune in to Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. And if this show resonated and if you think it was helpful for you, we'd love for you to share it with others who might need to hear some of these messages as well. Thank you so much. What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self-mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed, and you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead.